Hello, how are you doing? I just want to welcome you all, parents of sixth-year students. My name is Shay Dunphy. I'm one of the guidance counsellors in the school, of which there's two of us, Miss Malloy and myself. You will see that there will be two separate presentations based on specific details relating to what your son or your daughter would need to be aware of when it comes to their Leaving Cert year as regards entry to college, third level higher education, and various other things that would be important to know. My specific input will be based on four separate issues. One would be to do with apprenticeships. The second one would be to do with the Access College schemes, which is based on specific criteria, which I'll go through. The third thing I'll go on to speak about is the SUSI grant, Student Universal Support Ireland, which is in the days when I would have been going, and perhaps yourselves as well, when you heard about the SUSI, you would have probably heard it referred to as the grant. So that's what I'm going to be speaking to you about as well. And the final thing would be looking at sort of just briefly about accommodation and scholarships as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a presentation here, which should be visible to you very, very shortly. And that will hopefully give you an insight as to the information that you'll need to know about. So you will see that appearing very, very shortly. It's probably appearing now in a second, actually. And you should have it now. So it's the 19th of November. It's a time that is literally a matter of, a week and a half since the CAO opened up. So I can honestly say about the current Leaving Cert group that we have, they're really excellent. I have to say they've got off very, very quickly to getting research done and thinking about the things like deadlines and all that. And it isn't obviously easy, because they have November exams coming up next week, and it's a lot to take on for them at their age. But they're particularly good, I have to say, this year. They're really, really excellent. And meeting them one-to-one, been really pleasantly surprised by the level of research they've put in. So that really is very, very, very good. So as I said already, what I will be talking about is apprenticeships, the Access College schemes, which include there and here. If you've never heard of them before, I'll be going through them in reasonable amount of detail. I'll speak to you about the grant scheme, SUSI grant scheme, and anything related to fees and stuff like that. And then I will briefly end with accommodation and scholarships. So if you've watched already the presentation that was given by Ms. Malloy, the other guidance counsellor, in relation to the CAO, further education and PLCs, you will see that those ones are in bold, in black there, and the ones in red marked 1 to 4 are the ones I'm going to speak about with you now. Marked 1 to 4, starting number 1 with apprenticeships. So that's what I'll start with. And the apprenticeships are really, it's a form of education, formal education, that has been around for obviously a long, long time. But I really do think that apprenticeships now have really come to the fore. I mean, they are really viable options for a lot of students. Before, students tended to be looking at apprenticeships from the perspective of being craft apprenticeships, the typical trades, plumbing, carpentry, bricklayers, electricians and stuff like that. But apprenticeships these days are actually expanded beyond the craft apprenticeships, encompassing a lot of different areas. So I will draw attention to that. But in a sense, what apprenticeship are is that they're a standard-based education. It's kind of an earn and learn form, a form of education. You're actually learning on the job, but then you also have an element of sitting in a formal educational setting as well, like a classroom, where you sort of learn the theory and then you basically put that into practice on the job. So it's very, very good in the sense that it suits sort of a variety of learning styles as well. Apprenticeships tend to be 4 years long, consisting of about 7 phases. So the 7 phases of learning are particular periods of learning where, if you divide them up, 3 of them are off the job in a sort of like a training center or a college-based setting, and then 4 of the other phases that make up the 7 are actually on the job. So as regards an apprenticeship itself, the apprenticeship has to be done in such a way as that you know, if your son or your daughter decides to take up an apprenticeship, it will be with a registered employer who are actually registered with the local educational training board. Like, so the area that we're in, Longford, Westmeath, it'll be LWETB, Longford Westmeath Educational Training Board. They will have people registered with them in order for them to be then able to take on students as first year apprentices. That's just a diagram of the way the layout is of the phases of learning that one does on an apprenticeship. In the red is the on-the-job periods of time that you're actually working with the person that you're apprenticed to, and then the blue is in the training facility, whether it's in a training centre or, like, for example, in Athlone or in Longford Westmeath, you might see some people who are apprentices are actually doing some of their training you know, off the job training in a training facility in the training centre in Athlone, or in some cases in TUS Midlands, the university there. So the next thing would be to sort of just be aware of the different types of apprenticeships that are available. As I said at the outset, there are, you know, the traditional craft apprenticeships, but you can see in front of you here are apprenticeships that maybe you never would have assumed that they would have been available in these different areas. So you've got hospitality and food, ICT, which is information communication technology, insurance, logistics, recruitment, HR, sales and marketing. You'll see another screen here with agriculture, biopharmaceutical, finance, health and social, and then you also, of course, see the traditional ones like electrical, construction, those particular type ones, which are the traditional trades, if you like. So in terms of apprenticeships and in terms of, you know, how much they would hear about apprenticeships, your son or your daughter in school, I certainly would be, and I know Miss Malloy would be as well, would be very, very, very favourable looking towards apprenticeships, because of the fact that they really are absolutely excellent opportunities now. The demand is there because simply we haven't been producing enough apprentices. They are making, when they do qualify, making very, very good starts to their working life. They've built up experience straight away. They've had loads of contacts, and it really is a really, really excellent option. I'm so glad to see that so many students that would have been typically like college or third level only students are also now looking at apprenticeships, because they see that the earn and learn model is it's a really fantastic opportunity. And in that sort of picture that you can see in front of you, that's actually Thomas Grennan, who's the head of apprenticeships in that Athlone Training Centre. He's been here for the last number of years, coming to visit our students. And we've also worked to draw in some local large companies, like, for example, in this case, the engineering companies. I'm sure you've probably heard of them all. TEG, an engineering company in Mullingar. ECN Technologies is another smallish engineering company, very successful in Mullingar. And Shea Murta, precast concrete, of course, as well. They are always letting us know about the fact that they would be very, very happy to take on apprentices. The one in the middle, ECN Technologies, has most recently taken on a number of our students, 2 or 3 of them in the last year or so. Students that would be equally adept at taking on third level courses in engineering in any university, really. So it's just a brilliant outlet, and it's great to see students and parents engaging with the idea that an apprenticeship is a really fantastic alternative to your standard third level education that people would have tended to take. So that would be apprenticeships, and there will be information based on apprenticeships on the guidance website that's connected to the school site. I'll show you where that is. It'll be evident to you where you'll be able to find it when I show you later on in this presentation. Next thing is to do with the Access College thing, or here and there. What this effectively is it's a scheme through which there's two schemes actually. It's all part of Access College, but there's two separate schemes. You apply via the CAO, and what it effectively is, it offers eligible students based on specific criteria being met for them to gain access to third level education via the possibility of getting lower CAO points and extra resources given to them, such as technology, special induction given to them, extra tuition given to them. And the two separate schemes, one of which is called Here, the second is called There. The first one I'll talk about is Here in a second. The second will be There then. I will just outline to you how a student may be eligible for it and under what basis did they get it granted. So what I'll do is I'll start off on the Here one. Here is an acronym. It stands for Higher Education Access Route. What it is, it's an admission route for school leavers who, for social, financial or cultural reasons, have been underrepresented in third level education. And it obviously was designed to give all Leaving Cert students a fair crack at trying to get into third level. So there are a number of competing colleges, or colleges that participate rather than compete. Sorry, I meant to say participate rather than compete. These participating colleges all have here offices and their offices, which I'll speak about to you in a second as well. But they are all eligible for any students that are applying to them. They have schemes that allow you to apply under what's called this Here scheme, which potentially could mean those reduced points and those extra supports that I've just outlined in the previous slide. Applying for a grant, just to let you know as well, because Here is a form of it offers extra benefits to a student. It is not the SUSI grant. There's a thing called the Student Universal Support Ireland grant, which I'm going to be talking to you about in a separate section. So I just want to allay anybody's doubts about whether they think this is one and the same thing. The Here scheme is specifically got to do with access to third level college. The grant is a monetary award that's given, and one can also basically avail of the grant and get the Here at the same time. So there's two separate applications. The key thing about Here is that you will be applying via your CAO application. So that's one of the main differences between the application for it. So again, we've already just mentioned what the actual benefits are of it, but I'll just give you an example here. For example, if the Leaving Cert points for a particular course with 366, an eligible Here applicant could be offered a place with a lower point score, like 356. But it has been known that some courses may offer points up to even 40 points off the actual entry point. So probably more so with There, but that does happen in Here. But it really depends on the college. So in order to be eligible for There, then you need to be meeting the right combination of sort of factors that would make you eligible, along with what is ultimately important is the right income limit to make you eligible for it. So you need to be hitting an income limit, of which there's a set limit, and then you also then need to be meeting a match of two separate criteria, base 1 to 6, of which you add two sets of criteria to the income level. So as an example, if you, first of all, as I said, you have to hit the income limit, you have to be at a certain income level in order to first meet number 1 criteria. If you've done that, then a combination of 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 so have to be added to that to make you eligible. So let's look at the first one. Criteria 1 and 2, which would be the income limit and also be a holder of a medical card. And then you have 4, 5, and 6 added to that. Or another option would be criteria 1, which is the income limit, and then be in an area where the school is, which would be regarded as socioeconomic disadvantage, of which we aren't, so that won't apply there. The second one is criteria 1 and 3. So income limit, means test of social welfare payment, and socioeconomic group, which is 4. So it has to meet one of those combinations of criteria in order to be eligible. So this, to meet the criteria, your family income. So I have been referring to this income limit. So that, if you're probably wondering what is the income limit. So to meet this criteria, your family income falls on or below the here income limit. So if you're in a family of fewer than 4 dependents, the income limit would have to be €46,000. If you're the number of dependent children in the family is between 4 and 7, it's 51, and if it's more than 8, it's 55. So that would be the income limit that was being referred to as criteria 1. And then those 2 other, if I go back again, you can see what the criteria are there. It has to be matched with 2 others then, but specifically with those combinations that are outlined right in front of you there. So that's the higher education accent route. So what actually happens? Well, the CAO has to be applied for first. You have to get your CAO number first. So all students have been informed by Miss Malloy and myself about getting their CAO number. And specifically those who are applying to here, they already will be able to just tick a box to say they wish to be considered for here, but then they have to fill out an online form. The online form must be filled out and be done by the 1st of February, of which then they must have actually applied by the 1st of February, and then they must have actually filled out the online form itself that's attached to it by the 1st of March. When the online form is completed, the system, the additional form that's contained within the CAO application, will generate a checklist, or it'll actually specify what you, the parent, will need to produce to provide evidence that you might be eligible for it. For example, medical card, social welfare payment, income limits, the whole lot. And that has to be, if it's Department of Social Welfare or whatever the relevant department is that you have to produce the document for, you have to make sure that's sent in by the 15th of March. But we as guidance counsellors, when we know who is applying for here, will be making sure that you're keeping on top, your student, son or daughter will be keeping on top of that, so they know that the deadlines are they're way ahead, that they don't need to be panicking about not having the stuff in time or whatever. So that's how it works. So when it is submitted, you can expect to hear that whether the here thing will be granted to your son or daughter. That would be in, say, June. Of course, that's all subject to getting on the course first, but the here will apply, provided all the other criteria have been met for the course that your son or daughter has been applied to, and that will happen. But you will know about it in June, whether it's been granted or not. Okay, so that's the higher education access route to education call here. You see in front of you here, this tells you exactly what I've already said, what you need to start doing as regards applying to here. March the 15th is where the documents that have been asked of you to get, like a social welfare document, whatever it may be, that has to be in by March the 15th. So the next thing is there, that's disability access route to education. It's a 3rd level alternative admission scheme for school leavers who've had any number of things that may have impacted on their 2nd level of education. It's not essentially an exhaustive list. There are a number of different things, any number of different things that could make somebody eligible for DARE. Although you do find that most people who are applying for DARE tend to be in certain areas more often than not. Basically what you have in front of you here is a number of different disabilities, let's say, or learning difficulties that would have affected, let's say, if you have a son or daughter that has any one of those learning difficulties in front of you there, they may be the reason why your son or daughter could potentially get in on a course on lower points based on the fact that they met the criteria to get extra supports in school, or sorry, in college. Well, should your son or daughter apply? Well, if the disability has, or difficulty has had a negative impact on your educational performance in school, it may mean that the ability to get into a course has been affected because you won't be able to achieve the results that could get you to what you really want. So therefore, the DARE application may enable you to get in on reduced points to the course of your choice, anything up to 40 points. But it really depends on does depend on the college that you're applying to. But the participating colleges are pretty much the same as here, exactly the same ones as we You will, if you flick back to the slides, you see all the names of the colleges that are participating in this, practically all of the third levels, bar a few. So the educational impact. So what will actually happen is, I'll show you in a second, but the DARE application again is through the CAO. You'll tick a box, say you wish to be considered for it. There is an online form. The online form has to be completed by the student, and contained within is a personal statement that they must make to say how the disability or learning difficulty had an impact on their schooling. And once that's completed, then there is 2 other sections that need to be completed. The second section is what's called the educational impact statement section. And that's filled out by a student that is known, or sorry, a teacher or a guidance counselor or a learning support person that would be known to them, and they will complete that on the student's behalf. When it comes to additional educational needs, like for example, dyslexia and stuff, you'll tend to find that that will be assisted by the learning support person in the school, because they're the one who knows them best, may have conducted tests to do with literacy and stuff like that. So they'll have all the information that could put the application and make it sound obviously very, as it should be, convincing, because the student has been affected by whether it's dyslexia or dyscalculia or whatever. So in order to be eligible, you must meet the educational impact. So on the online bit, which is what the student does, they have to say how it's affected them. The part B, that's part A. Part B is where the person that I've aforementioned person, whether it's me as the guidance counselor or it's the learning support person, they then have to do a second document, which will be our voice in basically showing how the student has been affected. And then the crucial part, which is part C, it's all crucial, but the next bit is you obviously have to provide evidence of the disability. So basically the evidence will be a diagnosis. And there are different rules around how recent the diagnosis has to be, but that will all be prescribed on the website, and I'll be showing you where you'll be able to find that. So like for example, with dyslexia, for example, you're going to have maybe a psychological assessment that identifies dyslexia, or you might have somebody who's had significant literary difficulties who doesn't have a psychological assessment that identifies it, but they do have a fully completed statement by a GP and a recognized professional that can testify to those type of difficulties. So either or in that case, but it will all become obvious when you see it listed on the website itself. There's one for dyscalculia, for example. You can see there, I've deliberately taken that one out for you to have a look at, if you have a son or daughter that is within that, has a sort of a learning difficulty along those lines. ASD, autism spectrum disorder, is another typical one, which students who have been diagnosed with ASD, including Asperger's, they would also be people under the DARE scheme that could very much avail of what's been offered. And then you could see the type of documentation required. Obviously with ASD could be recent, or it could be a fair time ago, likely to be more of a distance away, but the documentation will be the diagnosis again, evidence of a diagnosis. So basically, when your son or daughter is working with whoever it is, whether it be the learning support person or the guidance counselor, we will be double checking anyway to see that we have the right information that goes with the application, because that needs to be right in order to at least give some sort of a chance of the application going through. Now, it is purely subjective when it comes to the college about whether they see somebody's application as warranting or meriting DARE being granted to them, but everything possible will be done from our end anyway to state that your student, son or daughter, would be deserving of getting that extra support, because obviously using maybe somebody with dyslexia, the learning support person or staff that would have been working with your son or daughter, if they have dyslexia, they will have that very in-depth knowledge over the course of perhaps even 6 years of how it has affected them. So, that will be the evidence that be provided by the staff member should be pretty compelling based on that. So that's again just the rundown of what I've just said. There's 3 sections. Supplementary section A is the online bit that's on the CAO website. That's just an extra form that's built into the CAO if you tick it. Education impact statement that's completed by the guidance counsellor or the learning support teacher. And then the final bit would be either a separate form that needs to be filled out in lieu of no actual official diagnosis, but something that could be testified to by a GP or a specialist, or it could be just the actual evidence of disability, for example, the actual report that confirms it. So one last thing when it comes to here and there, and that is, in fact, you can actually apply to both because you might be eligible for both, and they will apply the necessary one if it's granted. They'll apply the necessary one which best meets the needs of the student. So if you want to get a little bit more information about that, at this stage there's pretty comprehensive guidance resources put onto the school website itself, catalogued under guidance. So what you'd need to do is you need to go to if you do want to access stuff to do with specifically guidance stuff, because you're a Leaving Cert parent, there is a pretty comprehensive set of resources there for you as a parent to look at, of which the students all have access to as well, because not only is it on the school website, it's also connected to their Reach Plus account, which is a specialist guidance software that they have access to. It's under a paywall, so they're using something really specialized to do their research. So it's really, really helpful for them to be able to go and see what they've done and researched, and they're able to save things that they're interested in. And then when they've done all that research, they then can transfer that onto their CAO form through the work that they've done on this Reach Plus program, which actually is the premium version of a website called Careers Portal that is open to everybody, but it's the paid version that they're using, which they would have signed up for in TY, and if they hadn't done TY, they would have signed up in 5th year for that. So that's where if I just go back again, just to show you this guidance website, this is just literally a screenshot of the school website. But you go to Mercy Rochford Bridge, right across the ribbon, you'll see current students, and then you obviously hit a drop-down list, and you'll see guidance. See the arrow pointing at it there. Click on the guidance, and what you'll see then is you'll see specifically for senior cycle students, there's an entire category called the CAO, of which practically everything that you would need to know about the CAO is contained under it. But then there is also a specific section called senior cycle guidance, which is just above it. And again, as many things as we can possibly think of, we've added there. So it would hopefully provide quick and easy information for you if you just wanted to double check something. It's open source. It's off the main guidance website. It's off the main school website, I should say. So even though students have this on their own private Reach Plus account that I've just mentioned, this is open to you as well because it's just off the main school website. So next thing is the Susie grant. Is anybody who, like somebody who would start at school at the end of the 80s, maybe into the 90s, could be very much many of you that are watching this with kids now that are doing their Leaving Cert, but you would have heard of the grant. It was just known as the grant, kind of colloquially known as the grant. It's basically, official term is the Susie grant. It's the Student Universal Support of Ireland grant, and what effectively is that's just the label for it. Basically what it is, it's the main financial support scheme for students studying in Ireland, in the Republic of Ireland, but also in Ireland in general, north of the border as well, and the UK, or the continent of Europe too. As long as somebody's taking on a 3rd level or a higher education course or a further education course, like a PLC college, which Miss Malloy, if you see in her presentation, she'll have gone through. The grant scheme, if you're eligible, will apply to that as well. You can't apply for the grant actually until after Christmas. In fact, it's not till maybe the period between, say, St. Patrick's Day and Easter, and Easter's quite late this year, but it will be any time in between that it will open up. But the student grant itself, well, what it is, it's divided into two things. It's divided into maintenance grants and fee grants. And maintenance grants basically are grants that help students with their living costs, whereas the fee grants will pay for anybody that might be susceptible to having to pay tuition fees. But the tuition fees are paid for by the state, even though you're caught with the fact that you have to pay student contribution charges as well, because student contribution charges, in my mind, are de facto fees anyway, because you won't be able to gain access to your course unless you make a contribution, student contribution, and that can be, it's on average about €3,000. But the fees, the actual tuition fees are paid for by the state. So when we look at eligible students, as I said before, eligible students could be anybody that's studying, has to be studying third level, not third level, but higher education or further education. Higher education is anybody studying at third level. Further education is anybody that's moving on to education, standard college-based education that's further on from secondary school. Not necessarily, not in a third level, but it would be like in a PLC college. You'd have to be continuing in order to maintain the grant. You'd have to be continuing and moving on in your education. You wouldn't expect to get a grant paid twice for you if you decided to drop out and then go back the following year. It has to be, you have to be continually moving on in your cycle of education in order to avail of the grant the following year if you're studying an undergraduate program. So that's where we are with that part, for example. Now, there is a thing actually, I know when I've had some students in here already, because we've been meeting them regularly, as you can expect, because the CAO has been open recently, but we're moving along nicely. We're moving everybody, and there's no rush. People getting their CAO number is, as Miss Malai will have outlined in her presentation, it's literally a matter of minutes to do. Courses can be added up to July, provided not restricted courses, as she would have explained. But just in relation to the SUSI grant, in order to ascertain whether you think you might be eligible for or not, there is actually quite a handy tool on the SUSI website. So you go to susi.ie website, and if you scroll down the homepage, you'll see there's a thing called an eligibility reckoner, which is right in front of you there. It's like a little algorithm. So what you do is you answer a few questions, and based on what you've provided them, the algorithm will come up with this sort of a ballpark sort of answer as to whether they think you're eligible for the grant or not. It'll be based on income, largely speaking, but that's a handy tool to have, just in case you. But even if it said you didn't appear to be eligible, we still, if you thought that might have been wrong, for example, the eligibility reckoner had come up with saying that you weren't, you'd still put it through anyway and see what happens. And that's where it is there on the website. See the arrow at the bottom, the orange arrow there pointing towards the eligibility indicator. So the criteria that you need to meet in order to be eligible would be the residency and nationality. You need, the income is a really, really important thing as well. But they're all there. It's indicated there, and it will be very evident what you need to be meeting in order to be eligible for it anyway. Now, just in relation to college fees, for example, if you get the grant, there's two types of grants. There's the maintenance grant, which more or less covers the costs associated with college, but there is also a fee grant, and what that actually is that if you were to get that type of grant, that division of grant called the fee grant, what that actually would cover is practically everything that would be related to the college activities, anything from field trip expenses to the aforementioned contribution charge, which is, to me, is just really in effect is in effect like a de facto tuition fee, because the colleges are charging you that in order to access the course, even though the tuition fees are already paid for. So if you get the fee grant, you'll get the contribution charge waived because you've been given this grant. Now, back in 2022, there was a government incentive for anybody that was susceptible to paying contribution charges, which is most people, because you won't get the grant. Most people don't get the grant. They dropped the contribution charge, which I'd said earlier was on average about 3,000. The government were subventing the contribution charge by a grand, so it was dropping down to 2,000, and it's still right up to the present day. Budget 2025, as you'll see in the next slide, has allowed for that drop from what would have been 3,000 to 2,000 as a student contribution charge. And you'll see that when I look at, obviously, as I said, that you'll see that in the budget 2025, the contribution fee was reduced by 1,000 for the current academic year. And obviously, being where we are now and with a general election on the horizon, who knows what sort of quick changes can be made, but that's how it stands at the moment anyway. The maintenance grant, which is basically covers a lot of things, doesn't cover the types of things that the fee grant covers, but the maintenance grant can come in two forms. A grant can be paid to you on the basis of you living close to the college, which means that you would have more expenses to incur, so that you'll get more of a higher grant for that, or a non-adjacent grant, where if you're the adjacent grant is when the student college is 45 kilometers or less from the normal residence. That means you're close enough to commute, where the non-adjacent rate is paid to somebody who's more than 45 kilometers and perhaps has to actually live on campus or has to live within the area because it's too far to commute. So the total amount of the grant will depend on the level of a student's income, family dependent income, and there are family thresholds as well. So, I mean, it sounds a little bit technical, huge amount of income level taken into account, but it will be pretty intuitive once you fill out the form. You'll be guided through the form anyway and told what you need to submit. So as regards applying to get the SUSI grant, or SUSI grant as it's called, the application should be made as early as possible, but it doesn't actually open until early spring, that period between March and St. Patrick's Day and Easter. So as soon as it opens, it'd be recommended to apply as soon as you can, because sooner you have it in, the quicker they'll process it, hopefully. And also things would be in place in time for your son or your daughter to start college without never having to stump up any payments if the grant has already been awarded, which means everything will be waived based on the former grant that they get. So that would be the SUSI. That's, if you went onto the SUSI website now, that's what you'll see. It won't let you make any application now, not until that date, next spring, which is really not that far away. There you go again. That's the guidance page linked to the school website. Open up mercyrochefordbridge.ie. Click on the ribbon current students, scroll down on the drop down list, you see guidance there. And when you do that, I did say that there's two specific sections that would relate to you as a Leaving Cert parent. One section is known as senior cycle guidance, and then just underneath it will be the CAO section. But as you can see, there's an arrow pointing here to the Student Universal Support Ireland section. So you'll get more additional information about that, breaking things down a little bit easier for you to understand. And that's there. So next thing is college accommodation. Now, obviously, we're in as you well know, we're in an accommodation crisis, spiraling costs, very, very, very hard to get proper accommodation, satisfactory accommodation. So, as a guidance counsellor, more than aware of what the expense is. As somebody who's starting off as a first-year undergrad, though, I would definitely say, if it is at all possible, if it could be done, and your son, your daughter did want to stay, if they're applying to somewhere where they literally have to stay beside the college or near enough to it because it's too far to commute from home, on campus is ideally the place to start as a first-year undergraduate, because it gets them settled in. So that's my own little bit of pastoral advice on that. As regards accommodation, though, as of from 2022, 58% of college students have been living at home. I'd say that's probably even increased since then. That's based on a survey that was done a couple of years ago. I'd say by virtue of where we are in the country, we're, our proximity to the likes of Dublin, Maynooth, the whole lot, makes it very accessible to commute at Athlone, only down the road as well. So, I mean, costs can be definitely cut down greatly because of basically the location of where we're living, where your son or your daughter can access education, third level, higher education as well, further education, very, very, very easy to get to with the motorway system and stuff. I won't go through that survey there, but you can see there that was the Zurich, the insurance company, that's what their research would have come up with, sort of those figures. So you can see yourself, but it is admittedly probably slightly outdated now by years anyway, because it's 2 years old, but you can imagine things are not, they're along those lines there. So as regards accommodation, if let's say, I'm going to use Maynooth as an example, by virtue of Maynooth, let's say Kinnegad, if you go on the motorway, you'll see, you're driving along the road and you'll see Maynooth is 23 minutes or something as you approach Kinnegad from the Rochford Bridge side. So it's obviously not far, but let's say if your son or your daughter was staying in Maynooth and they wanted to get accommodation sorted out, it would be advisable, whatever college it is, whether it's Maynooth, Galway, UCD, whatever, for them to make sure that they keep an eye on the website, Maynooth website, university website in this case, and go to the accommodation section, and you will see that it's updated regularly as to how soon you can put down a deposit if your son or your daughter wants to is looking to study there and wants to keep a place for themselves if they're offered a course there. But it is competitive. There's an accommodation crisis. Things aren't easy that way. So just, you're more than aware of that, I'm sure. And that's just an arrow pointing at the student residence website that's contained within the Maynooth University website. Again, reverting back to our own guidance page, there you can see that there's a specific third level student accommodation link there as well, so you can go through that if you want. And the next thing then is scholarships. Scholarships are things that sort of regularly get asked by a certain number of students every year. Scholarships are they can take any number of forms. They can be sporting scholarships, they can be academic scholarships, they can be liberal arts, music performance type scholarships, based scholarships. But again, the best rule of thumb, because of the number of colleges there are and the number of different types of scholarships that are being provided by each one of the colleges, simply wouldn't be tenable for me to spend spending with each college talking through all of them, because there just wouldn't be probably need a couple of days to get through them all. But just to make sure that everything is all in one place for you, and so you can be aware of what the type of scholarships are, again, bring you back to the guidance page. If you click on the guidance page via the current students, you'll see also there's a link there for third level scholarships, which is really handy, because when you click on it, it brings you directly into the careers portal website that the kids use. And then you'll be able to search under whatever college that you're interested in, and you'll be able to get a breakdown of what the scholarships are available in that college, and there'll be links provided for specific scholarships in turn, which will allow you to look at what the deadline dates are, what are the criteria under which you might be eligible for it, and all that sort of stuff. So that's that. So that ultimately is that would be the end of my presentation. I hope that it's been informative for you. I know that you will probably at this stage, I'm not too sure which one you may have watched first, but you will have two separate presentations, one by me and the other one by Miss Malai, which delves obviously deeply into the CAO system and the PLC college system, and applying abroad to colleges as well. So please, by all means, if you feel like you want to get in contact for any further information, you can do so there. My email address is there. But again, all I can say is that we're here, always available to your son and daughter to give them the support they need to be making the right choices. So I wish you all the best in that. So all the best now. Take care. Bye-bye.